Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're doing good wherever you are. Thank you so much again for liking my page and also following me. If you've not done so already, please like and also subscribe to our channel. Today, I just want to be talking about the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. So we've been taught time and again by the mainstream media that this conflict was started because Mr. Putin is an aggressor, he's a bad man, he's a dictator, he doesn't want a democracy in Ukraine. So there's a lot of stories surrounding the Ukraine Russia conflict. But for me, I find this conflict to be a proxy war, and it's basically a war between USA and Russia. Okay, and this is confirmed now because when this started, there's a lot of people saying no, it's a proxy, and they were being blocked or they were being classified as misinformation. But now we've got evidence because it's been confirmed by the leadership of USA and also some of them from NATO that yes, this is a proxy. So in this article by TASS, it's a Russian news agency, but it's quoting Secretary Rubio direct. This was on Fox News. I can still get the Fox News, but I just got this one. It was quick to find this. So it says, Secretary Rubio here says the conflict in Ukraine is a proxy war between the United States and Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio acknowledged. It's been very clear from the beginning that President Trump views this as a protracted, stalemated conflict. And frankly, it's a proxy war between nuclear powers, the United States helping Ukraine. And it needs to come to an end, he said in an interview with Fox. So you see, a lot of people like myself, I've said that this is a proxy war, and the mainstream media has not been telling us the truth. And not just mainstream media, because mainstream media report what the politicians speak, and the politicians have been lying to us through the mainstream media, basically. Okay, and then also we do have Boris as well agreeing, accepting the same as well. In this interview, Boris, the former Prime Minister of Britain, confirmed as well that this is a proxy war. And then from there, we'll start off from there.
I get back to my earlier question. How we are? Let's face it. We're waging a proxy war. We're waging a proxy war, but we're not giving our proxies the ability to do the job. And for years and years now, we've been allowing them to fight with one hand tied behind their backs, and it has been cruel. It has been cruel, and we need now to give them what they need. So three things we need to do. To get this thing done, we need to give them the weaponry they need, give them the permissions they need, give them all the military support, logistical, tactical, we can, that without coming into direct conflict with the Russians.
Yeah, so basically, it's a proxy war, and we've got confirmation from these leaders that yes, we've been fighting this proxy war. Both Boris Johnson and Secretary Rubio have all accepted that they are fighting a proxy using Ukraine. Okay, and then also in addition to that, we had Lindsey Graham saying money spent in Ukraine is a best investment because Russians are dying. If you can just imagine that, so they can spend as much as they can in Ukraine as long as Russians are dying. So just watch this one, and listen to what he said, and then from there we're going to dive deep and understand where the whole thing is starting from.
I think, free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free,
Yes.
and we will be.
And the Russians are dying. The things you do for your country.
Thank you very much for your coming. Thank you very much. Thanks, United States, people of the United States, for all big support. President Biden, bipartisan
Yes.
support, Congress, and really, we thank you so much.
Bipartisan support.
Yes, it's very important, so we appreciate for, we know that from first days, we have total support, it's about 38 billion, and the big support, very
The
important.
best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's, you know, we're on let's see, this is 457th day of a war that was supposed to last 3 days. You amaze me. Your country amazes me.
It's about our people, and about your people. Your people help our people, all our appreciations.
You just, I mean, you remind me of our better selves in America. That there was a time in America that we were this way, fighting to the last person. We're going to be free or die.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free,
Yes.
and we will be.
And the Russians are dying.
Yes, but they came to our territory.
Yeah.
We are not fighting on their territory.
So there you got it. So first of all, I just don't understand how Ukrainians would just trust Lindsey Graham, unless honestly, this is a guy who loves wars. But the way you guys seem to love this person, I don't understand, honestly. But anyway, so that's in a nutshell. This is a proxy war, and then you see that USA is putting in investment in this proxy war to ensure that they feed their proxies, they arm their proxies so that they can get their job done. Okay. So from the USA perspective, according to General Austin, the Pentagon chief of staff during the Biden administration, he said, and I quote, let me just show you actually this. So in this article, it says Pentagon chief's Russia's remarks show shift in US's declared aims in Ukraine. So this article was in the 26th of April, 2022, okay? So Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he wants to see Russia weakened, a sign Washington now defines its goals differently, sorry. So basically this is where it's all coming from. The main purpose was they saw Russia becoming stronger after the break of the Soviet Union. Now they wanted to find a way to weaken Russia. And this is how they did it, through this proxy called Ukraine we see today. And unfortunately, a lot of people are dying, and most of them in Ukraine, because this war is happening in the Ukrainian soil. So who are dying? The civilians, most civilians who are dying are in Ukraine, or soldiers are in Ukraine, you see. So it's a tragedy that has come to this position at the moment here. The US Defense Secretary declaration that Washington wanted to see Russia weakened militarily and unable to recover quickly marks a shift in Washington's declared aims, underlying its military support for Ukraine. So their aim to support Ukraine was to weaken Russia. That's all. And that's why we had all those sanctions against Russia, to just cripple them so that they're back to Stone Age. And if they're back to Stone Age, NATO can just come in and sweep everything in and then just subdivide that big country into lots of small countries, which Washington can control easily. So now, let me get you back to the history of how USA wanted to bring this conflict to fruition, okay? It was by pushing for the NATO enlargement, by inviting Ukraine to NATO, which Putin on many occasions said no. Up to today, Putin says no, we cannot do that. Because if you understand, for the USA, no country is allowed to bring any military or influence near the Western Hemisphere. Okay. For example, I'll give an example. We had in Panama, the recent one in Panama, where the canal there in Panama was like being run by the Chinese. USA immediately went in, and also they even threatened that there will be military action because that country came from nowhere into that Western hemisphere because all that area is under the influence and control of USA. So no country can come in to do uh, any military operation, set up a base, or bring in any influence in those parts of the Western part of this world because of what they call the Monroe Doctrine. Okay, so here is the Monroe Doctrine. I'll just show you quickly. So under the Monroe Doctrine, so doctrine was articulated in President James Monroe's seventh annual message to Congress in 1823. The European powers, according to Monroe, were obligated to respect the Western Hemisphere as the United States sphere of interest. Okay, so this does not just apply to European countries, like, for example, going to Mexico and influence Mexico to go against USA, or to, in this case, for Russia to make Mexico a member of part of a military alliance with Russia. The Monroe Doctrine does not allow that to happen. Nowhere. Even if you remember during the missile crisis of Cuba, when Soviet Union wanted to place some weapons there, you know what happened? United States was ready for war, to start war there in order to prevent that. So that's the Monroe Doctrine. But in this case, USA does not respect whatever Russians have said about the threat to their security. If NATO had to move into Ukraine or Georgia or just around the border, because they've allowed most of these other countries that were part of the Soviet Union to be members of NATO. But at the moment, Russia says we're not going to allow NATO to come into Ukraine or Georgia. Okay, so that's the last. That's what they said. So, but it's just a disrespect from USA because them being like the most strong country on earth, so they can do whatever they want to do. So let's go back to the period when President Bush was the president, and how he advocated for the NATO expansion of Ukraine.
We spent a lot of time talking about NATO. First, I do want to remind people that Ukraine and the NATO alliance have built a strong partnership. Ukraine is the only non-NATO nation supporting every NATO mission. In Afghanistan and Iraq, Ukrainian troops are helping to support young democracies. In Kosovo, Ukrainians are helping keep the peace. Ukraine now seeks to deepen its cooperation with the NATO alliance through a membership action plan. Your nation has made a bold decision, and the United States strongly supports your request. In Bucharest this week, I will continue to make America's position clear. We support MAP for Ukraine and Georgia. Helping Ukraine move toward NATO membership is in the interest of every member in the alliance and will help advance security and freedom in this region and around the world.
So this is a lot of disrespect against the Russians and the president of Russia, because on many occasions, President Putin has warned NATO that expanding eastwards is a threat to us, and that can just bring conflict. And the Western governments, they knew that once we push for this, what's going to happen is the country that wants to become a NATO country is likely to be attacked by Putin. And once that is done, then we can fight with Putin in that way. We can fight with Russia through a proxy, because greater powers cannot fight because they've got nuclear warheads. So you know what can happen if those fight? It's just some destruction, which can leave a lot of damage. And plus also those presidents, those commander-in-chief, they don't want to die, so they want to send other people's children to fight in the conflict on their behalf. Okay, So what they'll do is they'll choose another country which is weak with leadership that is naive, that can just accept what they are told with just a bit of sweet talk. They'll just go with the flow. In this case, they chose Ukraine. At first, they wanted to go with Georgia, and Georgia got beaten like in a few days. And so it was expected that in Ukraine it's going to be the same, but NATO had already prepared the Ukrainians for the possibility of Russian attack, because they knew they were sending all those weapons into Ukraine, making sure that they are ready for any attack from Russia. Okay. So if you remember again in Bucharest, there was a meeting, NATO meeting, where Ukraine was invited by NATO. Again, they emphasized that Ukraine is going to be a member of NATO.
President Vladimir Putin to speak. He's been clear about his opposition to NATO membership for Ukraine and Georgia. The former Soviet republics had hoped for a green light from the alliance to start the process toward membership. Instead, NATO put the offer on hold. Secretary General Yaptahub Skeffer says the two countries will eventually be a part of NATO.
But I stand to be corrected if the sentence we agreed today, that these countries in the text, read Ukraine and Georgia, will become members of NATO, leaves a shimmer of a doubt. Not in my opinion.
So you say they've been advocating for this NATO enlargement to continue, and Putin has been refusing, but they continue to do that. And then in addition to that, they had already put a lot of missiles, a lot of military people in Romania. And then now next one will be a neighbor of Romania, which is Ukraine, to become a member there. So on many occasions, Mr. Putin has complained about why NATO is surrounding them. And then NATO was saying, oh, it's just a defense purpose. But Putin kept asking, but defend from who? Who are you defending yourself from? And you're expanding towards us. So in this one, you can. This one is just translated. If you can just listen to that.
Но что же происходит в это же самое время? А в это самое время в Болгарии и Румынии появляются так называемые легкие американские передовые базы по 5000 штыков в каждой.
So you see, all these countries are surrounding Russia, and USA has been sending and placing military bases and also a lot of military men around Russia. Basically, it was a way, for example, at this proxy succeeded, this Ukraine proxy war succeeded, where Ukraine now has even entered into Moscow. Do you expect the NATO will be just sitting back and say, no, this war is just for Ukraine? They will definitely go in, because that's an opportunity they've been waiting for, but they did not have that opportunity before. So, and this is where we are today. So let's listen again, and then we'll continue.
Получается, что НАТО выдвигает свои передовые силы к нашим государственным границам. А мы, строго выполняя договор, никак не реагируем на эти действия. Думаю, очевидно, процесс натовского расширения не имеет никакого отношения к модернизации самого Альянса или к обеспечению безопасности в Европе. Наоборот, это серьезно провоцирующий фактор, снижающий уровень взаимного доверия. И у нас есть...
Yeah, so guys, you've seen it again. Putin has been telling the NATO, USA, that you guys, what you're doing is not good. This is not going to bring peace, but it's just going to bring conflict. And what did they do? They just pushed further, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to provoke the Russians to start a war. And once they start a war, they can sponsor that war through a proxy. And then by sponsoring the proxy, they can weaken Russia militarily. And once Russia is weakened, then NATO can just come in and sweep the floor like like nothing is there. And this is where it was meant to go. But the way it's looking at the moment, it doesn't seem it doesn't seem like Ukraine is going to win this. And the longer it takes, the more expensive this war is going to take it to be. And already we see that most of the military hardware has been destroyed in Ukraine, and that's NATO hardware. A lot of missiles, a lot of weapons, a lot of money has been spent, and yet there's nothing to show that Ukraine is winning or has won part of Russian land. They were in Kursk, but they failed there. They were Russia called Belgrade, but they failed there as well. So where is this heading to? And that's why Trump today is coming in to say, no, we cannot go ahead with this one. Ukraine will never be part of NATO as long as Russians are strong. Had Russians been defeated by Ukraine, definitely Ukraine was going to be a member of NATO. But it won't happen. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. That's what I wanted to talk about. This war, we know how the USA operates. We've had in Libya, in most of the countries, proxy wars created by United States and NATO. Okay. All right, guys, you've seen it for yourself. This war is a proxy war, and it's a war that is happening because of the push for NATO, and knowingly that Russia is going to be angry, is going to be provoked, and they'll be provoked into a war. So, and they've achieved that. The NATO achieved that by provoking Russia into a war. And here we are today. The war is still happening. There's no solution to it to end at the moment. And we've got a lot of NATO leaders who are advocating for more support for Ukraine so that Ukraine can win. But for me, I think Ukraine cannot win this, and then I'll make another video where I'll make a proof about that. Ukraine is not going to win this war because it's a proxy war, and the proxy sponsors are divided. We've seen USA wants to pull out because they see that Zelensky and team are not complying to the demands of Washington to end the war and also to allow certain part of Ukraine to be given to Russia. So, and that's the consequence for proxy wars. Cheers, guys.